Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Esoterics podcast. Today, we have our first guest, and we welcome Daniella Marcantoni. And she is legitimately fascinating. You guys will love this one. Hi, Fiora. How are you?
I'm doing really good. I'm so happy to be here with you guys.
It's a good one today. Daniella is a licensed funeral director and a licensed embalmer. And then you also have a background as a makeup artist with extensive knowledge in the area of post-mortem makeup techniques. Yes?
I would say that. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Good. All right. So I did my research well.
I know. I could tell.
All right. So welcome to Esoterics. Thank you so much for coming and joining us. This is going to be a really fascinating conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So can you start off by telling us what you currently do and any projects that you're currently working on?
So I currently I have like a normie job for 9 to 5. I'm an executive assistant because I do have my bachelor's degree in business, but I also have a degree in mortuary science, and I have a degree in administration of justice with an emphasis on crime scene investigation.
That's fascinating.
And then I also am licensed as an embalmer, so I can basically work anywhere that I want, kind of like in the vein of a freelance contractor or whatever you want to call it. My husband's also a licensed embalmer, so we primarily work together. Basically, we can just kind of pick and choose the cases that we work on.
Wow.
He's been really, really busy because of COVID and everything, but like depending on how the week goes, I might work with him on a weekend or like during the week. And we like to kind of tag team like restorative projects or like restorations. That's why I personally wanted to get into the industry, and he too. I mean, he's like incredible. Like, I mean, I think that I'm good, but like he's like on a whole other level. I mean, he just has all these like really unique, he's just like MacGyver, you know, like with everything. So even if we're like in the mortuary and like we don't have something that we need, he's like, oh, let me try this. And he just has such a unique perspective on like how to approach a restoration. And because for the most part, we were self-taught, because in mortuary school, there's not really a whole lot of training or information on restorative art or like restoration in general. It's kind of like here, build an eye, and when I say build an eye, it's more like build this orbital socket.
Okay. And
you're just going to kind of shape it, and like it's a closed eye, so it's not really, you know, it's just the kind of just trying to get the general shape. Or like build a nose or build an ear. And then the semester project is to kind of create like a clay mold of a face based upon these particular equations that you can essentially use this formula, which I couldn't tell you what it is now because it's like,
sure.
But you know, you take a picture and you use this formula, and you create a grid on like the clay, and you can create the actual person's like life size proportions with this particular equation or formula or whatever you want to call it. And that's basically it. We create a mold, and then they create a negative, and then you can put your plaster, and they give you a positive like at the end of your semester. It's kind of like a little souvenir or something. I don't know.
So how did you get into this? How did you get started with like in that industry? Like, how did you know you even wanted to, you know, to do this kind of work?
So actually, it's kind of a long story, but so I actually learned that I am autistic like 3 or 4 years ago. So I'm only bringing that up because I've always kind of had like difficulty being in like customer like service type or like being with like people. That's always been really challenging for me. But for me, when it comes to like makeup artistry, I was actually doing something like tactile. So I was more focused on the makeup than I was on like the personal interaction, because you don't necessarily need to talk for that. Some people just want to sit and have their makeup done, or maybe they want to talk. All you have to do is listen. So for me, that was really, really good. So I already had that kind of like interest in like makeup and just like arts in general. I've always been like a creative. And I kind of always had a morbid fascination with like death and like crime scene investigation. And I kind of maybe wanted to go to medical school to be a forensic pathologist. I kind of didn't really know what I wanted to do. Cause, initially, like I had wanted to get into, like I was a singer and I did like musical theater and, you know, community theater when I was younger, but my parents weren't really supportive of that. They really wanted me to do something like academic.
Yeah.
So I went to private school my whole life, and I basically, my parents were like, well, we don't want you to like live on campus anywhere. So you're just going to go to Cal State Fullerton. And it was such a huge culture shock for me. Cal State Fullerton is like a huge commuter school. I mean, the classroom, I mean, there was more people in most of my classes than there were in my entire high school.
Wow.
So, I think we had like 70 graduating students in my senior class. So, I mean, it was really hard for me, especially also just like being sensitive to people's energies and just kind of being like socially awkward and not really understanding like how things work and dealing with like being bullied as a kid. And it just was not a good situation for me. And I went there for like 3 years, and I just came home one day and I said, I'm not going back. Like, I don't know what I want to do, but like, I'm not going back there. Like, it's not what I want to do. Like, I want to be a makeup artist. I want to go to makeup school. And they're like, no, you know, you need to finish a degree. You need something like whatever. So I was like, fine. My like best friend that lived down the street was going to Fullerton Junior College, and she was taking a class called homicidal behavior, investigation of homicidal behavior, or something like that degree. And I was like, oh, like I want to take this class. So we like would carpool, and kind of, I took that class first, and then I was taking some like GE classes. And then I looked into, cause they have like a feeder program through the police force in Orange County, through FJC. And they used to have like a police academy there, but obviously like, I don't want to be a fucking cop. So, okay, sorry. Can we like say,
yes, you're fine.
Yes,
you're fine.
The F-bomb is sacred and esoterics.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I was doing that, and one of my instructors at Fullerton Junior College was one of my old history teachers from my high school. And like, I kind of always was like a little weird and morbid. And like, I had said that I had an interest in, you know, doing like homicide investigation. I wanted to be maybe a detective, but I didn't want to be a cop, you know? So obviously like that can't happen. And my instructor was like, Daniella, have you ever thought about being a mortician? And I was like, what? No,
well, now I have.
Yeah, I don't know. It was literally like, it was so weird, because I'm like, why did I never think of this?
Light bulb.
Yeah. And so I'm not even kidding you. Like literally the next day, like I went and looked at the Cypress College, because there's only 2 schools in California. One of them is at Cypress. In Orange County, and the other one's like up north and like near Sacramento. So I was like, okay, I have to do it. And so I finished all the classes that I needed to do the CSI stuff and the administration of justice. And then I went on to finish all my schooling at Cypress. And, you know, and I was kind of like a weird fork, you know, I didn't know, like, did I want to be a forensic pathologist? Because that was going to be, I mean, 20 years, like, you know, with school and residency. I mean, the forensic pathology has like, I think the longest residency of all of the doctors. Wow. And, you know, I just didn't know if that was like a commitment. Like, I didn't know if that was like all I wanted to do, because while I think that it's like incredibly fascinating, like that artistic kind of it's missing from that. And what I love about embalming is it's like truly a marriage of like science and art. You know, there's obviously I've always been super into science. Like when I was a kid, you know, you'd ask me what I wanted to do, and I would say I wanted to be a scientist. And I just always have been drawn to, I feel like equal parts left and right. You know, I've used both parts of my brain, I think, equally in that regard. So yeah, that was pretty much. And it's funny because I remember when I was in I'm an atheist, but when I was in catechism in high school, one of the, like, we had to take all these like little core classes before we did our confirmation. And one of them was he had to visit a funeral home for whatever set of reason. I don't even know. Like
that's odd. I've never.
Wow.
I mean, I think it was to kind of touch on like death and dying and grief and how that relate. Like how I honestly don't even remember. Yeah. It was literally like years ago. And I remember the guy was like, "Have you ever thought about?" And I didn't remember this until I was like in mortuary school. I had like blocked the memory out. He was like, "You seem like you would do really well in a funeral home. Like, have you ever thought about like working in a funeral home?" And I just remember being like so offended by it. It was like, so like, what do you think I am? Like, I don't want to be I don't work in a mortuary, you know?
Saying.
And I think just like kind of, I felt that way because, you know, I'm still trying to kind of like fit in this like mold that like
for sure
my parents wanted me to be. And so, I remembered that like randomly. And my mom told me when I was 8 that like when my grandfather passed away, it was a closed casket funeral, and that like I forced them to like let me see him. Like, I don't know how many 7 or 8 year olds like are going to be demanding to like look inside their dead grandparents' casket. But apparently she said I wasn't bothered by it. And I remember looking at him, but I didn't remember asking to see him. So I feel like there's kind of like during my life, there's all of like these weird like little things that kind of led up to this point. And first time that I embalmed somebody, I was just like, well, this is what I want to do. I know what I want to do. When I was like, I still remember my first case that I embalmed when I was doing my apprenticeship. And it was just like, this is what I was supposed to do. You know,
that's how it happens. That's how it happens. When you find that passion, you find that thing, it sort of all clicks into place. Like, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to do. And of course it's going to, you know, apply to all areas, regardless if you are a postman, a post person, or, you know, an embalmer or a lawyer. Whatever. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. So our listeners know that Fiora and I like to break shit down and look at the science behind everything. Mm-hmm. So I basically, you know, just some questions that came up to me when I was looking through some of your other interviews, and decomp fascinates me because of, the two, how do I say this? In the area of you putting makeup on. So when someone passes, how quickly does a body start decomposing, and what is the science behind that decomp?
So people start decomposing immediately, but the environmental factors that surround the situation, like did they die in a dry climate, a wet climate, like a humid climate, is it hot, is it cold? Those things, did they die with the heater on in the summer or the heater on in the winter? Did they die in their house in the summer without air conditioning? So all of those things really impact like the speed at which decomposition happens. But basically it's just your body starts eating itself. I mean, it's organic tissue, and it just breaks down as the same way that a vegetable or a fruit or a plant would. It's organic living matter, and it breaks down. I don't even remember the names of the enzymes. Like, I probably feel like, I mean, I'm telling you, there was so much information in mortuary school. Absolute complete data dump. But I mean, there's basically enzymes in the body that kind of like eat, I think it's called like hydrolipase, but please do not put that
we won't hold you to it. No.
Yeah.
So when you're preparing that body for visitation, like, what is the most common challenges when it comes to decomp or comes to preparing them for visitation with makeup?
So decomposition is like not super common.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like it really depends like where you're at. If you're at the coroner, you're going to get a lot of decomp because basically like unclaimed bodies or bodies that died around suspicious circumstances are always going to go to the coroner, right? But when you're at a funeral home, you're basically getting people that died in the hospital, like at a hospice, like maybe they died at home. The percentage of cases that are like severely decomposed is, in my experience, it's maybe like one every like 20, 25 cases.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like super, super common, but it's not uncommon either. There is a point at which you can't do anything.
Okay.
You know, you have to be realistic with the family. You have to keep the expectations realistic with the counselors who are having the arrangement with the family. And, you know, if you like when there's like trauma where you're missing half of a face, like, okay, we can do that. If there's anything below the neck, like usually we can hide that. But if you're talking about like somebody has literally no face, then, you know, like I said, there's really a kind of like a threshold of like where you can do something and you can try and you can't really do anything. And again, that's like a collaborative effort between all of the associates at the funeral home that have to communicate that. But like in our case where we are not employees of the funeral home, you know, there's been times where we get a case and then their face is like covered in black mold. And the black mold eats their face. So, I mean, in terms of like the integrity and the structure of their face, it's technically still there. But I mean, to take off that black mold, you have to remove essentially like the dermis.
But also for you, isn't that dangerous for you to work around black mold?
Well, we use what's called, it's not like black mold like that you would.
Like the stuff that poisons you? It's not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I actually don't know a whole lot about like mold in general, but I don't know if it's like the same mold that causes like the spores that you would inhale that can kill you like in your apartment. But it is a mold that is black. Because there's different types of mold that we've seen on the faces and stuff. You know, the mold spores are everywhere. And once they're there, they're there, and you have to do like a fumigation and that's the thing we have to do too. We have to do mold abatement because, you know, when you are embalming somebody or they're stuck in like a cooler, depending on like the humidity levels and whether or not there's mold spores everywhere, you know, you really have to like do preventative measures to keep the mold. And we have like, and this isn't something that like trained embalmers typically do because in the industry, there's kind of like a joke that trained embalmers work is really shitty. And a lot of it is really shitty because the trained embalmers get paid per case. So they don't give a shit. Like they go in and they do their casing and they get their paycheck and that's it. But when you work at another mortuary, a lot of mortuaries don't. I think with COVID, they changed a couple things where you could get like an emergency, like reciprocity, like certificate or something so that you can embalm in other places where maybe they didn't have enough people to embalm. Cause I mean, you know, with COVID, it was literally insane. I've never seen anything like that. And I was working full time during swine flu. And I think maybe I saw 20 cases come through in the almost 2 years that pandemic was going on. And I don't remember it really being a particularly big deal.
Yeah.
And with COVID, it's just, oh my God, it's just, I mean, one mortuary that we went to, I'm not exaggerating, there was 40 embalmed bodies all around the mortuary, double stacked, which is not legal. And there's nowhere to put them.
Right.
So, yeah. My mom works in the hospital. And so we knew like the morgue just instantly, you know, as soon as, you know, that the pandemic hit, they started getting overwhelmed and then they started bringing in the refrigerated trailers to hold the bodies until they could get taken. Yeah.
And what's even crazier is like it was really bad this time last year. Mm-hmm. And we look at the numbers and that was enough to where we had to go on a state lockdown in November, December, January.
Yes.
Yeah. Like worse. The numbers were, I mean, like this. It was crazy. It was January, February, March were fucking insane.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh my goodness. So much to dig into. Fiora, I know you had some cool questions.
I do. I have a question, especially what we're talking about right now with the mold and stuff. What's the most bizarre state that you've ever had a human body that you had to work on? Anything odd?
I mean, I have a couple odd situations. Okay. Like we had one case where I did my apprenticeship and the mother of these children, I think she was murdered. And she was just left in a field. So, and it was in the summertime, and I think it was 2 weeks before they found her. And I actually was working that weekend. I was on that weekend. We used to rotate weekends, and I actually woke up with the stomach flu that day. Mm-hmm. So that was really, I mean, I had to go into work, and I was basically I had to do every step and run to the bathroom and throw up. I mean, decomp doesn't necessarily bother me because I was used to smelling bad things, but I mean, I was already vomiting before I got to work. So it was really bad. There was another case of this guy. He's a young guy, and he was a drunk driving, hit and run, I think. And it was just such a bizarre thing that happened. I was working on him, and a lot of times with traumatic accidents, you might not have all of the pieces recovered. Right. So maybe there's a finger missing or the foot missing or whatever. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so the counselor comes back while I'm working on this guy, and he was young. He was probably in his early 20s. And they're they gave me this little box, and they're the mom said that she wanted this with the son. And I'm like, okay. So I opened it, and it's literally a fucking toe. So the mom had gone back to the site of the accident and found his fucking toe on the street.
Oh my God. No.
I can't even.
Oh, wow. I can't imagine.
Yeah, it was so weird.
I'm a little surprised the toe would be left there, but I mean, I guess if it was at night and they're doing cleanup and all that stuff, I don't even know. It was just such a weird thing. And there was, we worked on a case a couple years ago. This guy was involved in some way with a mafia. I won't say which one. Not the Italian mafia. Okay.
And
it's getting juicy.
That's all I could say.
Yeah.
I just don't. I mean, I don't know. Maybe somebody's listening to this.
Well, you never know. I mean, I think we can guess if we're in California. We already know what mafia.
No, you
no.
You might think so, but not. So anyway, we got this case, and he was brutally beaten and shot in the head and the chest and thrown in the ocean, and he didn't die from anything. He drowned.
Oh my God.
That was how he died. He got shot in the head, but he drowned.
Wow. Yeah. Well, actually, I have a friend, one of my close friends. Her mom was actually shot in the head at a robbery at a gas station. She's not dead. She didn't die.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
yeah, it's crazy. It's you can get shot in the head and 1 millimeter the wrong direction, and it's over. But 1 millimeter away from that, and you're fine.
And you're fine.
So crazy to me. Well, not fine,
right? But
you
live. You live. So when you're embalming or you're doing restorations, do you ever pick up on messages? Do you consider yourself an empath or an intuitive or sensitive?
I would say yes, but in terms of honing that, in terms of in a way that I could vocalize a message, I don't think that I have that ability. I think I can pick up on energies, and there's definitely been times where I've worked on somebody and I just felt kind of a weird feeling. And there's definitely been, there's cases that have just kind of been work. And there's some cases that I've just kind of paused, and just for some reason, there was this boy, and I believe he killed himself. He was 16, and he was found in the foothills of Glendora. Mm-hmm. And they didn't find him for a while. So, I mean, when we got him, he was basically a goopy skeleton. Mm. And there were some things that the family brought to put in his casket. And, I was casketing him, and I put him in the casket, and there was all these little like books and trinkets and stuff. And like one of the books was Catcher in the Rye. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, God, that's such like a heavy read for that to be like the favorite book of like a 16-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And I just remember kind of like sitting there and just thinking about like what he would have, like what must he have been going through to experience that. Because I mean, like I was bullied really bad in school, and like I was suicidal at like one point in my life, and I still struggle with like suicidal ideation a lot. I think just because I feel oftentimes like very overwhelmed in my own body or in my own head. And so yeah, I just remember looking at him, and a few years later, I went to go see a spiritual therapist just to kind of, this is where I really learned. I didn't even know like that I was an empath. I didn't know that like I needed to protect my energy. I would just kind of let people, I attracted a lot of psychic vampires, and
yeah, that's typical for empaths. Definitely.
I think once I realized that about myself, I really just started to kind of create this boundary, and I like cut so many people out of my life that were just taking. And
yes,
since I had like let those people go, oh my God, it's just like my energy inside like was so much calmer. And I felt like, I just remember sometimes like I would have some friends who would call me, and I just would like, I would just become like, it just brace myself, because I knew that it was going to be this like long drawn out, like dramatic, thing, like
it's a thing. Yeah.
And so anyway, I went to go see the spiritual therapist, and I'm talking to her, and she like stops, and she's like, I don't want to alarm you. And I'm like, okay. She's like, you have about 22 spirits attached to you right now. And I was like, oh, okay. So we're talking, and she's trying to help me learn to like acknowledge them and to release them and to let go. But one of them like wouldn't leave. It was so weird, because I literally felt like, as she's talking to me, like I felt him put his hand on my shoulder and like clench it, like he would not let go.
Yeah.
And she said that he, like this particular boy that she didn't know anything about that
yes.
experience that I had. And she's explaining these characteristics about him. And I knew immediately who she was talking about once she started going into detail about it. And I was like, oh, that's like so-and-so. And so she's like, yeah. And she's like, oh yeah, that's who it is. And like, we're talking more, and she's giving me, I mean, and this is all unprompted. Like I never gave her any details about anything. So she was explaining stuff that like only I would have known.
Yeah.
And so he actually would not leave me alone for like years. He would go away, but when I would start to get into a relationship, he would come back, and he would not let me be happy. He like could not let go of me. Like he was just, I think because I sat there and looked in his casket and like had this like kind of weird connection. I think maybe that was something he wanted when he was alive, and he didn't have that. And so I think it was kind of like this obsessive little boy, like falling in love with like an older like woman or some type of thing like that, because it was like very much like he would only come back when I would start dating somebody.
Yeah.
It's not, it's so weird to other people, but I mean,
not to us.
Not us.
Not to us. And we can develop cords of attachments with other people, and we're all spiritual beings. So it makes sense that we can develop cords of attachment with spirits. A lot of times people will go on ghost hunts, paranormal, investigations, and they will come back with an attachment. So that's really, really, really interesting. How did you know that he was around? Was he creating trouble within your relationships? Yeah. I mean, and it's so weird, because like, how do you, like, when I'm like, how would he have created trouble for me? But I think, like, I don't know, like I would get like weird thoughts in my head. Like I have nightmares. Like I would feel this really uneasy, like presence, like a lot of the times. So I don't know. I couldn't even tell you like when he went away. I haven't felt him around in a long time. So I think he finally like let go like a while. I mean, at least before I started dating my husband. Maybe he went into the light. We like to tell spirits. To go into the light.
I was always really gentle and with him. I said, you have to go. Like, it's not that you're not welcome here, but, you have to pass on. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like we obviously can't be together. Like, so you need to move on. And, he was very, very resistant, but eventually he got the message.
Have you ever gotten a case where you're scared or spooked out by something?
No, I feel like very calm around dead bodies, like, or just being in the prep room and working with the dead. I just, something that I feel is very therapeutic, which probably sounds, again, crazy to other people. But it's just something that has I feel such a sense of calm. I feel like so much peace and calm being in a room of 10 corpses than I do being in a different group of 10 people.
Specifically when you're working with them, when you're embalming them and preparing them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I pulled your numerology numbers.
Okay.
And so I have your core chart. You are a life path 6, and that is the nurturer. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of, your, that's your life purpose. It's your path. It's that thing that you're just meant to do. You're meant to nurture. Mm-hmm. And how it's manifested for you is as, an embalmer. You also have a soul urge 6. So that is your heart's desire to take care of people, to show people, to, make sure that they have everything they need. Nurturers tend to also be healers. They tend to be very, very empathic, and also tend to be very psychic and intuitive. You add that personality 7 in there. Which is it's the number of the mystic. It's the number of the psychic and the intuitive. And that's where all of your seeking of knowledge, desire to just seek and seek and seek. That's where your introversion sort of comes from. That's where, the ability to pivot and juggle and have a lot going on, but always come back to really creating this one, sort of outcome. That's where that comes into play. And then you have a leader in there, and then you have a teacher in there too. So, all of those put together, you absolutely have chosen the right, path for yourself, just because they all come together and they're all aligned. And you're aligned when you still feel passion for what it is you do, and you're always seeking new ways to do it, but, kind of staying within that same structure. So yeah, I love that. I tried to figure out if you were, a master number, which is a whole other can of beans. But my calculator wasn't working at the time. So I'm going to, really quick here, see if you are. Yeah, there you are. Yep. You are a master number 33-6. Master numbers basically, you have a lot more challenges in your life, but you also have a lot more triumphs. So, master numbers are definitely, that's when you have a master number as your life path. You're destined for really big things, but it just seems like every step of the way, there's always some sort of challenge or struggle, and you learn how to overcome them versus succumbing to them. So I see your face and you're like, oh yeah.
I don't think anything in my life has ever been easy.
Nope, especially not with a master number in there. Yeah. So.
All right. I have 2 questions. I have 2 final questions. Are you afraid of death?
So I feel that I have always kind of maintained this mentality that we die when we're supposed to die.
Uh-huh.
And that's why people get in car accidents and walk away, and people die from, tripping on their ankle or something stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And that we're going to die when we're going to die, and we can't cheat death and whatever. And I felt really okay and calm about that for a long time. And when I was on my honeymoon with my husband, we went to, it wasn't really a honeymoon. We couldn't take time off of work, but we went to the Central Coast for about a week, which was really, really nice. And they had these hot springs, and we went in, March. So it was pretty cold because we were in Ottawa Beach, and we were in this, hot tub, and, the hot tub's I don't know, over 100 degrees, and it's 40 degrees outside. So I'm getting out, and I'm getting out carefully, because I know that you're supposed to, be careful. And I have low blood pressure as it is. so my husband's like, be careful, be careful, be careful. I'm like, oh, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. And I guess I fucking passed out. I don't.
Oh my goodness.
Don't remember. I just remember feeling like I was dreaming, and I woke up and my husband was like holding me, and he's like, I just caught you before you like face planted your teeth on the cement.
Oh no.
And I was like, cool. And so like I woke up and he was telling me what was going on, and I felt I was conscious of the fact that like I had just passed out and I was about to pass out again, and I could not keep myself from going unconscious. And that feeling to me was like, this is what it's going to feel like when I die. Like I'm going to be conscious of this, and I'm not going to want to go, and I'm going to everything is just going to go dark. And that was really scary to me. So I feel like ever since I had that experience, I've been like so like hyper aware, and I don't know if it's that I'm scared. But I feel like sometimes I see or think about things. Oh my God, this one thing, like it like upset me. I learned about that guy. I forget his name. He was the one who went into Nutty Putty Cave in Utah. Have you ever heard about him?
No, I don't think so.
So he was a spelunker. Why anybody wants to do spelunking, I have no clue, because I'm claustrophobic. So the idea of like squeezing myself in between like open caves and like small spaces seems absolutely terrifying to me. But anyway, this guy was spelunking in a cave, and he got stuck upside down, and they couldn't get him out, and he died in there. And they basically like cemented up the cave, so his body's like still there. And I just remember thinking to myself, like hanging upside down for 36 or 48 hours or however long he was, just knowing that I was going to die, like not being able to move. Like, I'm like, oh my God. Like somebody posted about it, I think in like Stairs and Mortician. And I was just like, oh my God, like I cannot think of a worse way to die. Like, yeah, like I just not being like completely being like bound and not having your like the ability to use your hands, or oh my God, that's just like terrifying to me.
So as an atheist, do you believe in an afterlife?
So like atheism for me, just me, like I mean that like I don't believe in like God, like the Christian God, right?
Okay. Yep.
Like I don't believe in the concept of like God be Satan. Like I am a member of the Church of Satan. Like, but I don't know if you know anything about that. But like we don't.
I do.
We don't like believe in Satan.
You don't believe in anything. Yeah. Right. Yeah. No.
It's very much like when I was a freshman in college, I took philosophy, and I remember like reading Nietzsche and just being like, wow, like. The first time, like I read something and I was like, this makes total sense to me. Like, you know, I'm the like architect of my own existence, and like I'm going to determine my own destiny, and like I need to rely on myself and not other people. So yeah, when I learned about like Satanism, like LaVeyan Satanism, specifically, like it was really just like, I just remember reading the rules in the Satanic Bible and being like, wow, like, this makes sense to me. Some of it's a little.
I read it too. I read it when I was like 14 or 15 years old. And I was like, this is just like the exact opposite of the Bible. Like, right. Really hard. Like when I was like, I may be like a more in between person.
Yeah.
But like Joe and I where our numerology, where we have our solar urge 5s, where like we don't like rules.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I like no rules for me, like in both directions. Like, yeah. So.
You know, for me, coming from like a religious family and like the Catholic faith, it was just more of because I didn't understand like why we were casting judgment on all of these people. Like, who cares if somebody's gay or like trans or whatever? Like, who the fuck cares? Like, are they a nice person? Like, exactly. Are they a murderer? Like, no. Yeah. Like, all right, cool. You know. Yeah. So for me, I'm not like. And like some people are like very like staunch like Satanists, like they're like really like way into the novelty of it, and I'm not. I just more so am into like, I don't want to say I'm like a heathen or anything like that.
You know what I really thought what the Church of Satan did with the statue of Baphomet that they did in that park. I love that whole thing that they did. It was basically have you heard of this, Joe?
No, I'm listening though.
That's the Satanic Temple.
Yeah. Oh, that was the Satanic Temple that did that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. They basically took a statue of Baphomet, who's not actually the devil. That's a whole other story for a whole other episode. Right. But, he's what people believe to be the devil. He's the one on our tarot cards, the devil card in the tarot, in the Rider-Waite version. That's Baphomet. Anyway, they took a statue, put it in a park, and it was this whole thing of like, oh no, this is freedom of religion. Like you have to let us, the same way you have a Christian statue up, like in a government, owned piece of land or whatever, you should let us have ours too, because we are also a religion. So it wasn't like about devil worship or anything. It was to call people out and saying like, showing them their hypocrisy, which I thought was cool.
Right. And that was, so Satanic Temple and Church of Satan have like a very, kind of like a weird like forced rivalry. Like, I literally could not.
The Bloods and the Crips.
I could not give a shit. But mostly, to be honest, like I feel like every time like I'm in there's like a couple like Satanist groups like on Facebook, and some of them are like tag groups, and I feel like every time like Church of Satan comes in, like some dumbass from like the Satanic Temple like comes in and they have to like try. I'm like, listen, I don't give a shit what you guys do, but Satanic Temple is more of like a political activist group, which is like cool. And like they have their like tenets of like their 7 satanic tenets, or I forget what they're called. But I just think the whole like the concept of being like having a rivalry with another like group or organization is antithetical to like Satanism in general. So like, I don't know why it's like, cause basically you are like becoming like very prideful and like you're trying to position yourself in a way that's like better than one another.
Yeah. You're splitting hairs.
Right. And it's just more about like focus on yourself and like, in Satanism, specifically in like LaVeyan Satanism, there's no such thing as fellowship. Like nobody gathers. It's like very much an individualistic type of a thing, which why partially why I loved it. So
right.
much.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. So my final question on this is, if you weren't doing this, what would you be doing?
Probably, I don't know, like, I don't want to say I'd have like a cooking show, but I think I would probably like pursue, like cooking education, or like, I don't know. I really, really, really want to write a cookbook. So I wrote a couple ebooks, that did pretty well. So I'm hoping like within the next year or two that I can probably like self-publish an actual like hard cookbook, or like even a food photography cookbook.
Very cool.
But I don't even know. Like, I mean, it's like, I would probably also like to be a lawyer. Like, but
I think it's the 7 in you, the 7 that wants to just know everything and do everything and learn everything.
But I'm like, also like, when you ask me that, I'm just like, well, what about money? Like, what about time? Like,
yeah, I guess you have to think of,
I can't even like answer that without like,
worrying about all these other things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Daniella, for taking the time to talk to us today.
Of course. Hopefully I answered everything like sufficiently, and
you absolutely did. Okay. Absolutely. All of my questions were answered. All of our questions. It was a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We appreciate your ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts. They help our show grow. And don't miss next week's episode when we talk about soulmates, soul groups, and soul families. Bye.
Bye-bye.